Welcome to The Wandering Naturalist, a Three Rivers Park District podcast.
I'm Angela, a wildlife biologist at Three Rivers Park District.
And I'm Brandon, an interpretive naturalist for Three Rivers Park District.
Three Rivers Park District manages over 27,000 acres of parklands in suburban Hennepin County and surrounding areas.
Join us as we wander from park to park and discuss the stories of the past, the nature in our present, and how these have shaped our parks.
Come explore with us, The Wandering Naturalist.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to The Wandering Naturalist. Last time we talked about the amazing world of dragonflies and how they spend most of their life underwater as nymphs, hunting around in there, doing ballistic defecation, all of that fun stuff. And then how they emerge and spend a short period of time as adults, flying around through the air as these beautiful creatures that really are amazingly captivating. And now, in this segment, we've got a special guest who's going to help fill in some more information for us.
Yeah, so with us, our first guest is Mitch, who I work with in wildlife. He's a wildlife specialist for Three Rivers Park District, and he is also a board member on the Minnesota Dragonfly Society. So, Mitch, can you tell us a little bit about what you do at Three Rivers, and then also a little bit about the Dragonfly Society?
Sure. I'm a wildlife specialist at Three Rivers Park District. I've been there for 14 years. We do a lot of habitat restoration, including invasive species removal, creating new prairies. We do a lot of forestry work. We kind of are a catch-all department that basically works on everything.
I see you around Creek Park all the time, and you're always doing something different.
Yeah.
You're also a board member on Minnesota Dragonfly Society. How long have you been involved with that project?
I have been involved with the Minnesota Dragonfly Society since its inception in 2013, I believe.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't know if we need to go into the whole story, but I will. So Kurt Oyen, I met Kurt Oyen, kind of the
same Kurt.
Similar story as Angela. Back in 2010, he was a seasonal for us. And at that time, he was working under Kurt Mead, who is also an amazing naturalist, who was doing the MOSP, the Minnesota Odonata Survey Project at the time. And like Angela said, he was surveying the entire state to see what species lived here and what their distributions were in Minnesota. And he was organizing citizen scientists when it wasn't really that cool.
What do you mean?
And now
isn't
citizen
cool?
science is like really cool
back
now.
Before it was cool.
Oh.
Yeah,
So what you're saying is you're the hipsters of the citizen science world.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. We're hipsters of some sort. And so, Kurt Mead kind of captured a lot of attention of a lot of different citizen scientists on this endeavor. And he was really good at getting people's attention and really gaining traction of we really want to figure out more about these things. And so through Kurt Mead and through Kurt Oyen, I became involved in about 2010. And ever since then, we just kind of have had this push to continue this on. After the funding stopped for Kurt in like 2012, we thought, let's do a 501c3 and keep this ball rolling, as there was still a lot to survey and a lot to learn. And so we formed the Minnesota Dragonfly Society in 2013, and I've been a part of that ever since, board member.
And you've done a lot of research as part of the society since then, haven't you?
Yeah, I really got my start in 2013 when I got a grant or funding from the Minnesota DNR, Gretchen Mahemel up in Red Lake, WMA, funded a 3-year project up there. And I got involved with that with Kurt Oyen and Kurt Mead and Bob Dubois, and we started doing surveys up there every year.
I went with you all for like your festival up there one year, and it was amazing. We slept my wife and I slept in a tent. I think there were cabins you could use too. And I remember like running through a bog, chasing into the same dragonfly for like 30 minutes trying to catch it. And I have to say, I think it was you and Kurt Oyen who really inspired me on that trip to keep on learning about dragonflies, because it was just such an amazing experience.
Oh, cool.
And you guys provided so much support for learning what I needed to learn. So
Yeah, that was a really fun trip. We used to do our Minnesota Dragonfly gatherings up there.
That's what I went to. And it was amazing. And you grilled an incredible cheeseburger.
Thank you.
The grill was sketchy. I don't know if I've been using it in a few years, but the burger was good. Well, some of this research I think that you've done, doesn't it have to do with dragonfly nymphs and how to identify them?
Yes. Yeah.
Because there hasn't been a lot of data on that, has there?
The data is a little bit sketchy on that, with the keys being a little bit unreliable. Even though we do have two of the best people in the country right now live in Wisconsin. Ken Tennyson is coming out with Dragonflies of North America right now, which is going to be a full key of all dragonfly nymphs in North America.
Oh, wow.
It's his entire life work.
I can
That's a big
imagine
book.
how difficult that would have to be to rate.
Yeah, it's taken him forever, and it's still kind of not quite out completely right now, but it'll be out real soon.
So for those listening, like there's really good field guides out there for identifying adults. So the things that kind of first draw you in.
The
But
pretty
can
parts
the
of them.
pretty ones, the colorful ones, but the ones that look like water spiders, because that's what I hear people say. Like when we have nymphs out, they're like, "Oh, what is that? It's a spider."
Yeah,
And you're like,
or
"No,
a
it's
water cricket.
like no, it's a baby dragonfly." So you're saying you can actually ID those.
Yeah, well, I've been raising these things in my basement. Don't judge me.
How does your family feel about that?
They love it because I
Awesome.
got kids as well. So
Well,
it's
and your
been a
son
learning
is like one
experience.
of the top dragonfly catchers in the state now.
I've been dragging him on surveys for as long as I can remember. So, but yeah, I've been doing that for like 6 years. I've got an entire room dedicated to raising dragonfly nymphs at my house, and I've been doing that for since 2013.
Why is it so important to figure out how to identify dragonfly nymphs and to then go out and find them out in the wild?
Well, because we want to be able to identify breeding habitat and be able to conserve those areas where rare dragonflies are breeding.
Okay.
And you can't know where they're breeding if you're just finding an adult in the middle of a parking lot somewhere, because they're really wonderful dispersers. So you really need to go in there and basically go swooping.
Swooping.
And that is a technical term that
that's-
should have maybe been the word of the day.
It's not quite a nature word, but yeah, it is one of my favorite words. Just because it's like we're going swooping,
And you mean like swooping with a net to catch them?
not aerial in the water.
In the water.
An
So
aquatic
swooping.
dip net.
So sweeping is in the sky and
Yeah.
swooping is in the water.
You got it.
Okay.
You're a
Okay.
quick
I did
learner.
not know this.
Yep.
Interesting. I'll have to correct my terminology in my next class.
Yeah, so we do a lot of swooping in a lot of different habitats to look for nymphs. I hardly even ever use my aerial net anymore. I basically just bring my aquatic dip net with and just do swooping for dragonfly nymphs.
So you're at such a high level. You've moved beyond the aerial ones.
Well, I just really want to know what species live where and why they live there.
Have you found any new species to an area based on the nymphs?
Yeah, we just found 4 new sites for ebony bog haunters
Really?
up in Koochiching County.
Oh, I love Koochiching County.
I do too. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
We've taken helicopters into that county because it's pretty inaccessible any other way. And the ebony bog hunter is kind of a cool species. It's a bog specialist species. So where we found these particular nymphs, the pH level was like around 4.1, which is really acidic. So they're a complete bog specialist. And they were really only known from Kurt Mead's neck of the woods up in Lake County, up on
Okay.
the North Shore. And so I think there's a record in St. Louis County. There's one in Itasca County. In Aiken County, but only like 1 or 2 here or there.
So not a very well-known species.
Not really at all. We didn't really know this distribution at all. And they go all the way up into Ontario. So we're missing a big population of these things going all the way up through Red Lake, peatland SNA, which is enormous, and Koochiching County, which is basically all peatlands. And so this year, out in some of our surveys, we actually caught nymphs. We were out there in July. This species actually emerges in May. So unless you're out there during the peak emergence season, you're not going to find the adults.
How long are the adults around for?
The adults aren't on the wing very long. They're a really short-lived species, and
Okay.
they're really poor flyers, so they are easy to detect
smaller,
if they're
too.
there. They're really small. Yeah, they're a little
So-
bigger than a elfin skimmer, which is the smallest species in Minnesota.
So really, you need to be able to identify the nymphs to find a species like that.
Yes, that's exactly right. Because dragonflies come out in all different times of the season. So you can go out in May, June, July, and August and find a completely different list of species all throughout the summer.
So they have different flight periods.
Different
is what
flight
we'd call
periods.
it.
Yep. And so if you're there when they're not in their flight period, you're not going to find them unless you're looking for the nymphs, which are always there.
So what other kind of habitats? You mentioned bog. What are if you could list off some of the different habitats that you'd go swooping in?
Well, you know me, I can't drive by a creek that has nice riffly water
You know,
and
you
highly
freak
oxygenated.
out, slam on the brakes, we're going swooping.
Yeah, I have a real problem with that. But and creeks are kind of my my crutch, I guess. I can't drive by a beautiful, serene creek without going and swooping in it. But up in the North Woods, we're always traveling around kind of in areas that we're not real familiar with. And that type of habitat just sticks out to me. I mean, there's a lot of different dragonfly nymphs that you'll find in that habitat that require very low siltation. And I'm talking about clubtails here, mostly.
So siltation just means suspended, like sand, dirt, muck in the water.
Right. Usually from some sort of development nearby, runoff.
Erosion.
So
you want to have very little of that for the clubtails.
Very little of that. They require very clean water, no pollution.
So then they're a good sign if you find them that creek is pretty healthy.
Absolutely.
Okay. So
They're
another
really
indicator
good water
species.
quality indicators. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we've used the indicator species word before in some of our podcasts, like with the frogs.
Frogs are a great
And so
one.
dragonflies are another great example of kind of
Yep.
being that canary in the coal mine where they're going to detect certain stresses or things in the water.
Mm-hmm. And so they're benthic organisms as well. So they live underneath the sediments, in the river, in the
So
riverbed.
benthic means under sediments?
Under sediments, yep.
Okay.
So they bury themselves to keep themselves concealed from predation. Otherwise, smallmouth bass and all kinds of things will eat these things up in no time. But they live underneath the sediments in gravelly substrate. They're basically milling around in there, mining out blackworms and bloodworm larvae, and there's a really cool species, and
That's
they're all
awesome.
really rare.
So you're saying you'd find different things in the river than you would like in a pond.
Yes,
So
very different.
So in a pond, you're going to find maybe more generalist, or are there even really specific species to just ponds?
No, ponds will pretty much hold all kinds of skimmers, like the big, beautiful, brightly colored skimmers.
With the colorful wings.
Colorful wings. They can pretty much breed in any permanent water. You'll even find them breeding in sometimes in a backwater of a river. But the real species specialist comes out when you're in a bog or a peatland, a fen habitat, rivers, creeks, streams, with undercut banks.
So then if I want to find some of the adults and instead of go swooping underwater, go sweeping up in the air, what are some good habitats I could check out?
Crowhassan Park Reserve is an awesome place within the parks. We have a lot of good upland habitat there. So we have the Crow River that kind of borders the park. There's a lot of really neat species coming out of the river, and they use our park as an area where they can harden up, mature, feed. They kind of use the windbreaks of the woods along the open prairies, and you'll just see just tons of them just cruising up and down, feeding on mosquitoes and flies and everything else.
So kind of checking by the river and then checking in the transition between woods and prairie. Those are good areas to search for them?
Yeah, so when they emerge, they emerge early, like in May, and then they'll go up and they'll feed for 2 weeks. They'll mature, feed, and then return back to the river to oviposit.
Okay. So Crowhassan's a great park then to look for them, you said. Are there any other good areas within Three Rivers to look for different kinds of dragonflies?
Well, I think Elm Creek is a really great place.
Well, I am partial to Elm Creek Park.
I know.
There's a special little dragonfly there.
Yeah, the Plains Emerald lives in Rush Creek, which is it's a pretty amazing species. I mean, if you look at any kind of species that
It's
is
beautiful.
brightly colored, looks like it's painted.
It's larger.
Well, I know you told me the story of how it was almost going to be put on the threatened species list until it was found in Elm Creek Park Reserve. And then you all started looking at that specific kind of habitat with cutout creek banks, and you found it. It was actually, you found a lot more of them throughout the state. But didn't you tell me that Elm Creek Park Reserve is you have to go to Mille Lacs and farther north before you find the Plains Emerald again?
Yeah, they have a really weird distribution. It's kind of all over the place. They like the open plains areas out in western Minnesota.
Yeah.
But they really are tied to that really narrow, small creek habitat with undercut banks. I mean,
And
the
that's
nymphs
why-
live in the undercut banks, and that's where you're going to find them.
Well, that's why Elm Creek Park was created, was for its small creeks. And when you told me that you all had found them in Elm Creek Park before, we created a summer camp to take summer campers to go and search for them. And it was amazing. I remember the first time I found it because we had 10, 9 to 12-year-olds walking in the creek with me. And we're just looking for this Plains emerald that none of us have ever seen before. And anything that moves, we're like jumping at. And the water's up to like the kids' waists. And they're having a great time. And then finally this thing swooped in front of us. And we all just start swinging our nets. And we finally caught it. And the kids just started cheering like crazy when they realized it was a Plains emerald. And it was just this amazing experience. And we've been able to see them there since every year now that we know where to look. Actually, the Minnesota Dragonfly Society hosted like an international conference for dragonflies to take people to look for that one.
Yep.
And that was another time that made me laugh because we have all these dragonfly hunters hunting for this plain emeralds and all of us are missing. And then your son just kind of casually walks up and goes, "Oh, I caught one like 5 minutes ago."
Is this what you're looking for?
Exactly.
He does that on like almost every trip we
I
go
have to
on.
bring him everywhere I go.
It's none of us could catch it. And then he's like, "Oh, what are you guys sweeping for? I caught it forever ago."
And where
No
did
big
we
deal.
find that? In the upland habitat, because it was at that time of emergence where those young adults were out flying around over the grassland looking for food.
Yeah.
They weren't really patrolling
We didn't
the
see
creek
hardly
yet.
any patrolling. Yeah, he found it in the prairie.
Yep.
I've also heard that Coon Rapids Dam, which is becoming Mississippi Gateway Park, they have a lot of dragonflies you won't find in the rest of the park district because they have that Mississippi River there.
Yes. Yeah, they have 5 different species of clubtails that you can
Wow.
find right out of that little spot right there.
The elusive
The
clubtail.
elusive clubtail
I caught an
is really
elusive
cool.
clubtail by hand last fall. I was so excited. I'd never seen one before. It was a cold, rainy day, and it was hiding in my raspberries. So I just went and I cupped it. I was like, all right.
Yeah, that's one of the hanging clubtails. It's called a styluris. So that one comes out a little bit later in the season, like in July. And it's elusive because when it comes out, it goes straight to the treetops.
Really?
You never see it again.
You never see it. The adults are really hard to catch, like you said, but you caught it late in the fall, right?
Late in the fall, it was cold, it was rainy, it
Yeah.
could barely move.
That's when you catch that species because then they come down and they're a little bit more lethargic and they're hanging on branches and you can pretty much, if you can spot it, you can catch it.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, they're really cool.
So if I want to find clubtails, I'll go to
Crow.
Crow and
or
to
Coon Rapids Dam.
Coon Rapids Dam
Yep.
or Mississippi
Mississippi
Gateway.
River.
And then if I want to find emeralds, or Plains emeralds at least, Elm Creek Park Reserve has that kind of. My experience has been the first couple weeks of July.
Yep.
Are there any other good places in the park district to find unique dragonflies?
All the parks hold
All the
really
parks.
unique places for dragonflies. I mean, there's a lot of different places, and Baker Park has a bog.
Oh,
Carver
wow.
Park has a bog.
Okay.
They're not really super high quality bogs, not like what you'd find up north. I mean,
Well, we're pretty close to the cities.
yeah, we're close to the cities, and there's a real fluctuation with water. So the tamaracks are actually kind of dying out in those bogs because it's an unsteady fluctuation of water is what happens. And we have invasive species down here. So a lot of the one at Carver actually has a lot of buckthorn growing in it now and starting to really become established in that habitat type, which shades out everything else down below. So you don't have that macroinvertebrate level of dragonfly food.
Okay.
And so, Murphy Hanrahan has a lot of really cool habitats. They have a lot of wooded ponds, which makes for a little bit different habitat as well.
Okay, so you get slightly different species there, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
spread wings. I've had luck with spread wings at Murphy. I don't know what it is about Murphy, but
Those are the damselflies
Yeah,
that
the
open their
smaller
wings a
ones.
little bit.
Yep. mhm.
Okay.
Yep, and black tip darners. It's one of the only places you'll find those.
And darners tend to be our largest dragonflies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, they're really pretty large. And Elm Creek, we've extra striped snake. What was that? That was up there.
We caught a fawn darner.
Yeah, fawn darner in the river,
Yep.
but we got a green striped darner.
Yep. Okay.
So that one probably came from like the Hayden Lake bog complex.
Okay. Yeah.
That's more of a boggy species.
Yeah, right up in the northwest part of the park.
Yep.
So it sounds like Three Rivers Parks are great places to go catch dragonflies. Do you have any words of wisdom? Anyone who wants to kind of get involved in that and learn more about that since you've been doing it for so long?
Yeah, I would say look up the Minnesota Dragonfly Society and come out and just grab a net and go slugging through some wetlands with us, and
You guys are incredible teachers. Very patient. You really help out.
Well, it takes a lot of patience too to catch dragonflies. So
You got to run a lot. It's a great aerobic workout.
It's a good workout, but you're gonna need some patience and a good teacher.
Are there any books people can look into in the meantime, like if they want to start kind of look into it on
Yeah.
their own?
Kurt Mead's book, Dragonflies of the North Woods, is probably the best place to start. Everything in that book is found in Minnesota.
Okay.
Don't forget the damselfly book.
Yep. Bob Dubois' Damselflies of the North Woods. There's Ed Lamb's Damselflies of the East, and Dennis Paulson's Dragonflies and Damselflies of the West and East.
Okay. So any of those books would be a great place to start.
For Minnesota Dragonflies.
And then you just got to get a net and you can get started.
Absolutely.
Or you can go to a nature center to one of their programs and we can give you the nets and the books and
Or you can
show
come to one of the MDS events.
Absolutely. And how would they find out information about the MDS?
You go to minnesotadragonfly.org.
www.mndragonfly.org.
I think you forgot a W.
www.
There you go.
mndragonfly.org.
Or
You guys
just
know how to
Google
search something.
Minnesota Dragonfly Society, and it's the first thing that comes up.
Well, thank you, Mitch, so much for being with us today. I am excited for our next guest. Amy's going to shed some more light on a particular species that she's doing research at one of our parks, Crow-Hassan Park Reserve. So I'm really excited to hear about how her research has been going.
Thanks so much for coming and talking to us and sharing your passion for dragonflies.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brandon.